day of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Personal Reports, where I narrate and discuss some of the cryptid and unexplained sightings and encounters submitted to Phantoms and Monsters and the Phantoms and Monsters Fortean Research team. So thanks for joining me. This channel was made possible by you clicking the subscribe and like buttons, and by you sharing our program. Now, super chat donations are appreciated during the show, and afterwards you can go ahead and send us a super thanks donation as well. Also, the Buy Me a Coffee link and banner are also shown below, so thanks for your consideration. Now, if you're in the chat, you have a question about something I'm talking or reading about or discussing, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to it after my presentation. I'll let you know when I'm on the last account, so then you can go ahead and post it up onto the chat. So tonight, we're going to be talking about Glimmer Men, or Glimmer Man, or whatever you want to call it. This is kind of a new term for this phenomenon. It's interesting how some phenomena that are depicted in films and television are later seen by eyewitnesses. Is it a tulpa effect, or did the original creators have a similar encounter? In the years since the original Predator film, there have been many sightings of what is described or called the Glimmer Man throughout the world, but more so in North America. Now, the Predator franchise was originally created by the brothers of John and Jim Thomas. And I have attempted over the years to gather insight on how they came up with the cloaking concept in the film, but so far I still have no tangible information. You know, several of the Chicago Mothman witnesses who have talked to our investigative team have described the winged humanoids as being like the Jeepers Creepers creature as well. Now, do these memes or tropes from films, the internet, and pop culture influence what witnesses observe? I mean, it's all relative, I assume, but it's all in perception too, what people see and what they determine it is. So what are your thoughts on that? So think about that while I'm talking about this, this phenomenon. So we start off. A married couple is sitting on their porch when both observe a semi-transparent figure high in the neighbor's pine tree. Now, the wife describes it as being like a cloaked predator from the film franchise. Now, she states it was late summer afternoon in 2017. My husband and I were sitting on our sun porch. It's a sun porch that looks out over a driveway and towards our neighbor's property, where he has a humongous pine tree. Now, my husband asked me, "Do you see what I see?" It just so happens I did. He never described what he was looking at, but pointed, and following that, I saw the creature like that in the movie Predator. It was transparent, kneeling and looking at us from a perch high up in the tree. You could only see an outline of it when it moved. It appeared weightless because it was so high up in the tree. Now, those branches couldn't hold much weight. It was just staring at us, and when it realized that we saw it, it went behind the main body of the tree and disappeared. Now, this was the first time my husband and I had seen it. My husband has seen anything with me, and so it changed his whole perspective. Now, of course, he's more open-minded and not too quick to dispute when I share things I've seen now. He is ex-military and has been all over the world, but this was at home where he saw something that couldn't be explained. We both saw it without a doubt. Now, these semi-invisible beings, I don't know for certain what they are. We both have theories. What I know for certain is that they look like the cloaked alien in the movie Predator when it was transparent or invisible mode. And it had a lizard-shaped head. So that's how she ended it. The next encounter sighting, a reader forwards 2 different encounters that he and his niece had with a Glimmer Man entity at his home. What do you think these beings really are? Have you had a similar encounter or a similar incident? And if you have, please feel free to write me. Now, the first encounter, the date was July 14th, 2018, 2 days after my birthday. At the time, I and my girlfriend were living with my parents in their old 2-story brick house. Our room was upstairs. It was around 10 or 11 at night, and I and my girlfriend were lying in bed. Nothing out of the ordinary was going on. Just typical night, just chilling out in bed. First, let me mention I'm a grown man. Yes, still live in my mom's house, but still a grown man. I don't get scared easily. I'm not afraid of the dark or the boogeyman, but this night is going to test my scaredness. I never even imagined in a million years something like this would ever happen. It was the furthest thing from my mind. So we're lying in bed, and my girlfriend had to go downstairs to use the bathroom or something. Mind you, the bedroom light is on, and I'm lying in bed. The TV isn't on. I haven't watched it all day. But all of a sudden, this is how I'm going to describe it as close as I can. So suddenly, it feels like my bed is about almost shaking or vibrating, in a sense, me not understanding what is happening. I start looking around, but as soon as I turn my head to the right, I can see plain as day a silhouette of a human shape. But this human-shaped figure, you could see straight through it. It kind of looked like heat waves, but a distinct shape of a human. No mistake about it. Okay, let me pause and do a recap. I came to realize the bed was shaking or vibrating with me trembling out of fear before I even saw anything. It's like my gut feeling was in tune trying to warn me. Back to me seeing the human-shaped see-through figure. I was just struck in a stare or gaze of awe when suddenly I watched it walk in front of the bed, all the way right to the side of the bed, and in a split second, my conscience said, "Get up now and run." So I jump up, and I swear I don't even remember walking down the stairs. I was gone that fast. Now, mind you, my mom, my dad, my sister, and my girlfriend are all right there in the dining room when I bolt through the downstairs door. They looked at me and said, "What's wrong? You're as pale as a ghost." I kind of didn't want to say anything to them because, let's be honest, if I told you what I saw, a clear person, how are you going to react? But this is the weird part. We don't mention this to anyone. About a week later, give or take, my niece comes over. She was 10 at the time and liked riding the 4-wheeler trike. So she rides it for a little bit, shorter than her usual ride, comes in, and she's pale as a ghost. And we ask her, "What's wrong? What happened?" She says, "Please don't think I'm stupid, but I saw an invisible person chase me on the 4-wheelers. It had a grown-up body, but it was invisible. It didn't have any facial features. All you could see was just the shape or the outline of a human-like body. I instantly got chills all over my body." Well, I told her I knew exactly what she had seen because I had a similar experience a week before. I told her, "You're not crazy. It is real. I don't know what it is, but I saw it too." So, a Pennsylvania woman is traveling to North Carolina to visit a friend. Now, while in Beaver, West Virginia, she observed a 7 to 8 inch tall cloaked Glimmer Man figure trying to cross the road. Now she states, I recently found your blog and was curious about the Glimmer Man incidents that you've written about. I had a similar encounter several years ago. I'm curious as to what you think. The date was Thursday, September 8th, 2016. I was on a trip from Northwest Pennsylvania to visit a friend in North Carolina. I had been driving for about 5.5 hours when I left Route 64 and drove onto Airport Road and came down a little town called Beaver, West Virginia. I stopped at the KFC to grab something to eat. When leaving, I made a right out of the parking lot onto Route 19. I was driving slowly as I hadn't picked up speed from pulling out yet. Because I was driving slowly, I'm sure I never would have noticed this. I was approaching some leaves spread across the road when I noticed the leaves were moving, but there was no wind blowing. I slowed down thinking there may be an animal in the leaves, and I didn't want to hit it. I was looking hard because I could see the leaves moving, but I didn't see an animal. Then I could make out a small bipedal figure about 7 or 8 inches tall that seemed to be trying to hide in the leaves. Now, as it tried to get across the road, it looked as if it could see, as if I could see a line of each part of the creature, but it seemed to be cloaked, kind of like a chameleon does, but not quite the same. It moved with a ratchet-type movement, rather jerky. I don't know if this was its normal gait or if it was injured. Now, I was driving at a crawl by this time because what I was observing was so bizarre, and I was trying to make out what it was. I was thinking, what in the world is this thing? It almost looked like a frail stick figure, as I could only make out some of it. I thought maybe it was a emaciated squirrel, but they don't walk on 2 feet, and if it was that skinny, it'd probably be dead. Not jerking across the road. It was not a featherless bird either. It had reached the center line and was attempting to cross the rest of the road when a pickup from the other side came speeding along and just missed it with its driver's side tires, and I saw the leaves being thrown. I don't know if it made it or not, as cars behind me were honking at me to keep moving. I thought about turning around and see if I could find it because if what it was could have been an animal, but this was not an animal that I'd ever heard about or seen before. The more I thought about it, I realized that it may have been cloaked and was picking up the color of the leaves to disguise itself. It reminded me of the cloaked alien in the movie Predator. I could see it, but I couldn't make out exactly what it was. Now, as I tried to rationalize this in my head, I thought maybe it was a reptile or a lizard of some kind, like a chameleon that can, turn different colors to hide. An octopus can do the same thing, and maybe we just never seen them, or because we know what they are. Then I arrived at my friend's house that night. I told her about it. She never doubted me, as I'm not prone to make up stories. I'm a very rational person, but I still wonder what that thing was and if these predator-like entities exist all around us. Now, I did contact the witness, and we discussed her incident. And in our discussion, she described the shimmering effect as indicative of the Glimmer Man sightings. I had no idea what this cloaked being may have been, but the stick-like creature figure description is interesting. So here's a strange one. Now this, of course, you all know we're involved with these sightings in Chicago, around Chicago. But I didn't expect to get a Glimmer Man report as a result of the Chicago sightings and us reporting about this. But that's exactly what happened, because this person saw reports about the Mothman or winged humanoid and contacted me. So this Chicago woman is at her father's apartment. She's on the balcony taking a break when she observes a Glimmer Man in a tree below her. And then there was another witness as well. So She states, I'm no storyteller, but I will try to recall as much detail as possible. Now, my experience happened on September 2nd, 2022, not that long ago. I had been out through the day running a few errands here and there for my dad, who is elderly. Later that same day, to return to my dad's apartment, which just happened to be in a tall residential building in Chicago. His apartment is 6 floors up, and I do know the building. I checked it out to make sure, where it was exactly. It was not too far. Actually, not too far from the lakefront. So at the same point during the early evening, I decided to go out on the balcony for a quick cigarette. I was standing there just staring out into thin air and not really thinking about much or doing much. And as I stood there with my cigarette in my hand, I shifted position and began to observe a very large tree about 20 feet away. It was roughly about 15 feet down from me. I noticed that one of the branches on this tree was bowing quite heavily, which I remember now thinking back was quite odd at the time. Now, as I'm staring at this branch and trying to make sense of what my eyes are seeing, I have this horrible feeling come over me. The more intense set of dread and fear. It was like almost every part of my body was screaming at me to turn around and run, but I didn't know why. Now, at this very moment, the bowing branch that I had just been observed began to shake violently, despite my internal instincts still screaming for me to leave. Curiosity had now gotten the better of me, and I started to move along the railing to get a closer look. Then I saw it. What I saw at first was a small glimmering form. As I stared a bit closer, this glimmer then became what I can only describe as a transparent human figure that shimmed a yellow-white color. I snapped out on my fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing. It suddenly hit me that what I was looking at was like something straight out of the movie Predator. More specifically, when the predator is using camouflage. Now, at that very moment, when I realized what I had just seen, this thing dropped out of the tree and hit the ground below. It landed directly behind a man who had happened to be walking past at the time. The man immediately spun around as if something had been thrown at him. The only thing I noticed was a cloud of smoke or dust arising from the ground behind the man. I waited for some time expecting to see this thing reemerge from the dust or smoke, but it was completely gone. Now, at the same time, another neighbor just a few floors below had also observed the same thing as me, and they managed to confirm all the same details. The neighbor and I then managed to track down the man who was walking past a few hours later. We had a conversation with him, and he said that he felt an impact but didn't see anything when he turned around. He also went on to report that he felt the same dread that I had experienced only hours before. Does anyone have any idea what these beings are? I feel like they can be dangerous. So I eventually talked to both witnesses by telephone. I talked to the original witness first, and she gave me the contact of the person she had talked to. Now, they were both pretty apprehensive about this entity. The witness believes that the entity still inhabits the area and that she occasionally experiences that feeling of dread when visiting her father. Now, the location is the Groveland Park neighborhood. So people in Chicago, if you know that area, that's where it happened. Now, the next account, a witness describes the appearance of a Glimmer Man during a drum circle on the banks of the Missouri River in North Dakota. Some people believe that these are cloaked Bigfoot. I'm writing you from North Dakota, and I was intrigued when I saw the term Glimmer Man on your website. I had a similar encounter 2 summers ago in the area called Kimball Bottoms, or as the locals call it, the desert. Anyway, I was down there at a drum circle they were having, and I don't know if it was the drumming that attracted this thing or what. I was facing the water and the banks of the Missouri River, and it's still being light outside around 7 p.m. in the summer. I could see everything clearly. I thought I saw a heat signature on the opposite bank, like heat rising off a hot parking lot in the summer. It stood out to me as I had been staring at that area. Anyway, zoning out as I went into an almost trance-like state due to the drumming, I started seeing this thing move. I stopped drumming and walked over to the edge of the bank. The more I watched, the more I realized this heat signature looked like arms and legs. It was like swaying to the drumming still going on behind me. My friend came up and asked what I was looking at, and as I pointed it out to her, other people from the circle came to notice that what we were pointing at and staring at something across the river. More people stopped drumming and joined us on the bank. Some could see what we were seeing and others couldn't. Eventually, nobody was drumming anymore, and this Glimmer Man had stopped swaying and was watching us watch it. More than one person had mentioned that it looked like the invisible yet visible alien from the movie Predator. It was after maybe 3 minutes of watching this invisible being, only not to see anything when reviewing the images on the phones. Not surprising when you're trying to photograph a nearly invisible heat signature looking thing. Now, at one point, we could see this thing move back into the tall reeds and were surprised as the reeds parted. Those who didn't see the being couldn't help but see the reeds part as it moved away. Now, a few of us sat there for a good hour waiting to see if this invisible being came back, but we didn't see anything. However, many people freaked themselves out by talking about what this entity could be. Was it lurking in the water, walking along the shore, hiding in the trees, etc.? I must agree that all had viable points. It was a very surreal encounter and only deepened my beliefs on things existing in the folds of what we call reality. Now, this next witness contacted me about a specific and then subsequent encounters with this Glimmer Man being. Now, she states that my encounter is about something called the Glimmer Man. I'm from Southern Ontario, Canada. It had been mid-July 2018. My boyfriend and I were spending a day in Toronto at a few restaurants, having a couple of drinks throughout the day, and then decided to head back to the hotel early and crash. Now, I woke up at about 5 a.m. or so. I do wake up early, but not this early. I was trying to go back to sleep. It happened that there was some light from dawn coming in from the window. The curtains were drawn in the hotel room, but there was still some light coming in. I noticed that I could hear it was my boyfriend talking in his. I noticed that what I could hear was my boyfriend talking in his sleep. I looked over at him. Now, I guess there was probably about 3 feet of space between where my boyfriend was lying on his side of the bed and the space between the walls. As I looked beyond my boyfriend, I saw a shimmering movement along the wall. As I continued to watch, I distinctly made out a humanoid form. It was kind of rocking back and forth. I didn't know what to think. Maybe I was tired of imagining this. Then I saw a pair of eyes manifesting on the face of this being. Now, as I watched, the eyes turn to bright yellow color. Then the being crouched down and out of sight. Then suddenly it popped up right beside my boyfriend. I saw a shimmering hand reach out and cover my boyfriend's face, then pull back when my boyfriend made a gasping sound. Then it happened again. I started shaking my boyfriend, but he wouldn't wake up. The being then stood up and started walking around the bed toward my side. I immediately jumped out of bed and headed towards the bathroom. I entered and slammed the door. I yelled for my boyfriend to wake up, but I heard no response. Then I heard him gasping again. I opened the door and saw the being lying on my side of the bed. I stood and watched, yet again yelling at my boyfriend to wake up. Then suddenly my boyfriend woke up and let out a horrific scream. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. I looked over to my side of the bed. The being was gone. My boyfriend tells me that he had an awful dream as someone was trying to smother him. I started crying. I told him what I had seen. At first, I didn't think he believed me, but the more I talked, the more he realized that his dream was like what I was describing. We quickly packed our bags, checked out early, and then drove home. Since that day, my boyfriend and I have been married. We bought a house and plan to start a family soon, but I occasionally see the same Glimmer Man. I believe he hitched a ride back with us from Toronto. He isn't here all the time, but he seems to show up at the most inopportune times. Can you tell me what to do? Can this be removed? Is it a spirit or a malevolent entity? Well, I talked to the witness by phone for several hours, actually. I do believe this may have been a Glimmer Man, very similar to what I've heard about it, not in that context, but, the actual description. But, this one was unlike any I've dealt with previously. Now, it wasn't a shadow person, or maybe even not even a spiritual energy. It was something different. Now, I wonder now if there are several types of Glimmer Man beings. Could this be a camouflage entity? I'd be interested in your thoughts. And if you have any idea, please feel free to write me or ask me about it or say something in the chat. Now, this is the last account I'm going to read. And if you have a question, go ahead and put it into the chat. A security guard at a Colorado tourist location recalls his experience with a Glimmer Man entity while on late night guard duty. Later, a former co-worker describes his personal encounter. So back in 2012, I was working for a small security company. We were contracted to work at a tourist location called Broadmoor Seven Falls near Colorado Springs in the Cheyenne Mountain Canyon area. I remember shifts being grueling since we were in direct sunlight until the afternoon and evening. And on the average shift, we were expected to walk a minimum of 7 to 8 miles between the base of the parking lot to the top, the falls. Rather, we were allowed using the, were we allowed using the guest elevator for the handicapped and the elderly. The whole park was on a hilly incline, so walking the top down was okay, but bottom up was exhausting. Now, in the evening near the base of the falls, Native Ute or Cheyenne travel dances were performed, and we had to monitor the crowds. Now, these falls were frequented by area tribes for hundreds of years and were still considered spiritual. So it was the Native tribes that pushed for the performances. Now, since Seven Falls is considered a state park, at the end of the night, we would sit at the main entrance into the falls at the bottom of the canyon and monitor the toll booth. Now, during weekends and holidays, we were out there until 3 a.m. On several occasions, when waiting for the end of my shifts, I always had occurrences that made me feel like I was going to get attacked by either an animal or a person. We would hear hissing sounds and groans. Sometimes there were glowing eyes, either red or white in color, but larger than area wildlife. These could be seen from behind the bushes and tree canopies. But what stuck with me were the shimmering humanoid forms. The shimmering was otherworldly. The way I always described it to my family and a few friends was like that of the Predator film Alien when it was cloaked. My first work firearm was an older Smith & Wesson semi-automatic single-stack pistol that was my dad's when he worked for the local police department. But it still felt I was defenseless. I watched this shimmering silhouette crawl on the asphalt over to the toll booth. After that, it appeared to stand upright and extend a long waving arm. This looked like an entity between the physical and spiritual realms. As I shifted my weight to get a closer look, I was struck by the glowing reddish eyes. I then watched as the entity jumped to a tree no less than 20 foot away. From here, the entity jumped again. This time, a broken branch fell from a tree, creating a loud crashing sound. The entity looked back one last time before going over the gate and disappearing into the park. Now, in May of 2022, an old co-worker and I ran into each other while at the Walmart. We decided to go to the nearby diner next door and talk about the good old days. Now, during the conversation, he asked if I ever saw the Predator in its camouflage at Seven Falls. My blood ran cold. He then proceeded to tell me about his experience on his shifts that I had never heard before. After leaving the diner and arriving home, I sat in the driveway for a moment contemplating what inhabits the park. So folks, if you've got any questions, put it up there. I'll look over here and see if I can find anything of what you posted. Immortal Clown, thank you for your donation. I very much appreciate it. Anybody got any questions? Put it up on caps. I'm right there looking. And nobody's asking, but I will say I had no idea what these things are. Now, you know, I could have probably written about it in my memes humanoid book, but I didn't. I mean, it wasn't what we consider a crawler humanoid or something like that. This is entirely different. I don't know if I'm ever going to write about it. You know, it's still a newer phenomenon that we really don't know a whole lot about. I mean, you know, it occasionally pops up. Mortal Clown asked, are glimmering people connected to ETs? I don't know. I wish I did know. If I would venture to say that if it was connected to any phenomena, that would be the phenomena it would be connected to. Now, there are people who have seen this glimmering man effect and an association with Bigfoot. Now, I did see a photograph of a kind of a semi-transparent Bigfoot, half of it like glimmering and half of it solid. So is it a cryptid, type of cryptid that's, you know, that's vanishing or camouflaging? I don't know. Savage Grammy. Lon, how does the Glimmer Man select the victim? I have no idea. I mean, you know, I think with a lot of this type of phenomena, even like with the winged humanoids, I think they pick who they allow to see them. That's just my thought. But I have no way to know how they would select a victim. Marla Snyder, have you heard stories of a Glimmer Man actually pursuing people? Yeah, there have been a few. I mean, there have been people who swear that the thing chased them at one point. Now, it wasn't anything like them actually chasing them, catching up to them. It was like a bluff, or like it seemed to be charging at it and then backing off, but it was nothing nothing like a sustained chase. Nancy Malcolm, do Glimmer Men appear armed with weapons? Not that I know of. It's not like the movement. I have no evidence of them having weapons. Bernadette, has anyone seen a group of them, or do they tend to appear alone? That's a good question. I can't recall any multiple sightings. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I just don't know of any. Nancy Malcolm, are any governments working on cloaking, and have sightings been near any base? I'm thinking here. I know there have been some sightings by soldiers. Now, was it on base? I think it was near a base. I'd had to dig a bunch of those up. I've got a bunch of older sightings, and I only really started looking into this phenomena about 4 or 5 years ago, when my buddies Kyle and Cam over Expanded Perspective started getting sighting reports sent to them. They shared it with me, and since then we've been looking for these accounts and been asking about them. But there have been people in the Bigfoot world who swear that they may actually be cloaked Bigfoot. Bruce Maccabee is one in particular in Ohio. He swears that he had an encounter with one in Ohio. Dave McGinnis, are most Glimmer Man sightings outdoors? Yeah, and that indoor one was unusual, but most of them are outdoors. Mark Wojtaszek, do you think this phenomenon is related to Hat Man? I don't think it is. I don't think it is, even though that one account seems similar to like a Hat Man, but I don't think it is. Mothman 46, have you ever heard of someone getting bull rushed near the steps and feel the footfalls of an unseen entity? I have heard of people feeling and hearing footfalls, but we also get that with cryptids as well. A lot of times people will hear heavy footfalls outside of a tent or something and look out and not be able to see them. But yeah, I mean, we do. Thomas Carroll, could some ETs be using the glimmer effect to cloak their spacecraft? I suppose that's absolutely possible. I can't think of any that we've uncovered that may even be associated to that. And Verpine has asked, has Glimmer Man ever been seen in association with a UFO? Not that I know of. But look, anybody watching this video, if they have anything like that they've seen or associated with that, please feel free to contact me, because I would love to be able to get that and look into it. In fact, I it's interesting. I talked to Sean Forker today, and he just got a report yesterday about a Glimmer Man sighting up in his neck of the woods, which is north central Pennsylvania. So he's looking into that. So if we get any sightings where we can get boots on the ground, that'd be great. Robo 1776, are there any reported unique characteristics like sounds or environmental changes occur prior to an encounter? No, they're just random sightings, nothing distinctive about pre-sighting or people realizing that they're having the encounter. Dave McGinnis, are Glimmer Man sightings a relatively new phenomenon? Absolutely. That's why the association with the Predator films, I think, is important. I have tried to contact the producers and the creators of the Predator. I have talked to people involved with it. They had no idea where the concept came from. So there you go. Marla Snyder, are there ever any odors reported with Glimmer Man sightings, sulfur? Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Nancy Malcolm, do Bigfoot, Glimmer Man, etc. hunters ever carry a K2 meter? I don't know. Honestly, I guess they probably do, but quite honestly, I can't remember getting any feedback on anything like that. I guess maybe they ought to start carrying equipment for when they have, in case they do have an encounter that they just can't explain. Mothman 46, one wonders if Glimmer Man and Shadow People are related. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a possibility. It just seems that, from the accounts that I have gotten, over the years, it just doesn't seem to be the same being. I mean, it seems to be something entirely different. The characteristics aren't the same. Savage Grammy, are the sightings increasing? I think they are. Or more people are coming forward with it. So yeah, it's relatively new, but you know, I think that when people realize that others are having these sightings, that they'll come forward. Hopefully that's the case. Bernadette, has anyone ever been stalked by a Glimmer Man? Maybe a generational attachment? Not that I know of. That's a good thought. So, folks, I want to thank each and all for watching and chatting. If you made a donation, it's truly appreciate your support. Is what makes all this possible. So please like, subscribe, and share it. If you have a sighting or encounter report that you'd like to be considered for the personal report show or post on Phantoms Monster, feel free to contact me at my email at Lon Strickler, phantomsmonsters.com. So until we meet again, stay healthy and stay safe. Good night. Reality of phantom